Hello, this is Dale Matthews. This is Inside News, and Mike is out spending time with his family for the next couple of weeks, so I'm on my own with you and with videotape. So, as you can see behind me, how to spin the truth to win grants. There's a story about the Peace Corps. And they had gone into Africa because they were concerned about fresh water and having water come to the homes, the huts of African villagers. And their purpose was to cut back on all of the time and the effort. It was taking a couple of hours a day to get down to the river and collect the water and bring it back. And their thought was that they would put in this water system so that the women, because that's who was doing this, would not have to go all the way down to the river and trudge all the way back, and it would save them hours every day. After doing all kinds of work and spending all kinds of money and putting in the water system so that water was piped into every hut, they came back after a year and found that all of the water spigots were destroyed. Who did this? It was the women. You see, nobody had taken into account what the women really wanted. They wanted to spend a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours, out of the house, out of the hut every day, talking, gossiping, socializing with their friends. And what this did was, it was very efficient in an American style, but it was isolating the women in their homes. They just didn't think it through because of a cultural bias that this would be a much better thing. It's not always a better thing. One of the things that I won't say you because you're the audience. But one of the things that I can run afoul of in this show, in Inside News, is being too critical. Really, why don't you cut them a break? They can't always be wrong. They certainly must have good hearts. They're doing their best. A variety of different explanations. Notwithstanding the videotape that we watch, why can't you find all the wonderful good things? There must be more than enough to fill up every show, simply talking about the wonderful, wonderful things that government does for you. Well, I'm constantly asking myself, isn't there something great that we can talk about? And we do. We did a story recently about the new forestry department head. And we've done stories about transportation in our area and the new county clerk and a variety of other things. There aren't as many, I will confess, real positive stories as there are negative ones. But that's partly due to the kind of people who are running the county at this moment. And we're going to try to make a change. It's going to be an incremental change for sure, but there's a possibility. And if you watch last night's show and if you watch tomorrow's show, you'll see me talking with the county commissioner candidates that remain, those that will be in the general election, about how specifically, what do they plan to do to follow the law. And, I brought up a specific example last night. Here's a document that should be made available to the public before a meeting, and there are documents that should be available to the public if they want to read them after a meeting. It's the law. And the law is there for a reason, so that we can, so that there's some transparency, so that we have a clue about what our elected officials are doing. Unlike what Don Reedy said, who was interim county commissioner, it's none of your business what we're doing. Unlike what Simon Harris said, it's going to cost you a lot of money to keep track of what we're doing, Mr. Matthews. Unlike what the other two commissioners have done, is just say things that are completely false and then hide behind the protected time for county commissioners so that nobody except on the show can call them to task and say, wait a minute, that's simply not true, and here's why, and let's show you the tape so you can see for yourself why. So this Board of County Commissioners seems especially vulnerable to me to ideas that come in the door that are not too bright. Here's an example of something that cost us dearly, and listen to what it was that Eric Shaftsma, who was supported by Joseph Rice and others, the data that they brought to the county commissioners, along with the help of the head of the health department. This is from last year.
If you look at your reports, you think the aluminum in the aqueous sample was at 20 parts per million. In the sediment sample, it was 17,065 parts per million. The arsenic, which was at 7 parts per billion, was 21.1 parts per million. So we're talking about 3 magnitudes higher in the sediment sample. And then
okay, so Eric Shaftsma of the Grants Pass Water Lab, once you do the math on it, was telling the county commissioners that the maximum allowable limits in the water that we drink was 6,000 times higher than what is safe for people to drink. Arsenic levels. Now, as it turned out, there were a couple of citizens who went out and did their own test through a lab that's got a better reputation, and they found there was no arsenic. Now, this is Eric Shaftsma, a politically connected fellow that's in the area, that was telling the commissioners that he wanted money. And they eventually decided to give him the money, mostly with the leadership of these two commissioners, that's Keith Heck and Cheryl Walker, $135,000 a year. He ended up getting $77,000 for essentially 1 month of work that he was supervising rather than doing. And there was no arsenic. There was an arsenic scare here from someone who said that he's a professional and that he had said that he had done the tests, and then it turned out that the test showed a 0. The commissioners bought into that without getting a second opinion. The commissioners bought into that even though Grants Pass said, well, I'm not sure that we see this. I'm not sure that we see it. Oh, well, we're going to have to do it. Why are we doing it? Because the water that we bring in was going to water the grass in some parks. We weren't drinking it. So I think that it pays to watch over what the commissioners are hearing in the little back room, and what things are they agreeing, because they think, boy, this sure sounds legitimate to me. There were a lot of people who said, no, this can't be right, but they would not listen, and they pushed forward and pushed and pushed and pushed. Even Simon Harris said, you know, I'm not sure that I buy this. Well, they did. Okay, so today in the little back room, we had Diane Hoover, the head of health, once again, come in with some college students that had some well-meaning ideas. Remember the Peace Corps, well-meaning. And you should be able to, and we'll talk about a little bit here, should be able to pick out right away where some of the potential problems are with their logic. They would very much like to, you know, push forward with more studies, and grants are on the way, potentially, based on these studies. And keep in mind that while you're watching this, that they'll be talking about homeless young people. And how do you count homeless young people? And what does homeless mean? And for that matter, what is a young person? But I think we can probably assume somebody under 18 years old. What does it mean to be homeless? We'll stop and start this, and then you tell me what you think. Are the commissioners buying into junk science that's being promulgated by people with good intentions. Here's the tape from today.
And the other one that was concerned was...
Nope, that's not the tape. This is the tape.
Morning. Please state your names for the record. We have two guests with
My
us.
name is Cassandra Allen, nursing student from Oregon Health and Science University. And I'm Michelle Vasquez, trained VASQUEZ.
I'm sorry, despite the audio level that I boosted, despite the fact that I was in the room, despite the fact that I also double-checked this against the county's recordings, it's very difficult sometimes to understand what these people are saying. Sorry, it's just, that's the reality of the situation. I'm straining while I'm there going, what? What did she just say?
And I've invited Michelle and Cassie here to present to you their findings. They did a homeless youth survey for Josephine County. So with that,
Okay. So our objectives for this term is going into just to kind of find out what the barriers are for the homeless youth in Josephine High School, and also see what the perceived barriers from the homeless youth themselves, and then also from the community organizations in Josephine County for the homeless youth. So a little bit of background. So the 1,551 homeless people were counted in this year's pig count, which was a
1,551 homeless people. 1,551. Not about 1,500, not about 2,000, not over 1,000. 1,551 homeless people. How do you count homeless people? Is your count going to be accurate? Just exactly where you go to count homeless people. I guess you can try. 1,551.
17% increase from last year.
What? A 17% increase from last year. Not of 20%, not an over 10, not even 15, 17%. This is the problem with junk science. When you get down to the point where you have to define what does it mean to be homeless, you have to find who the homeless are, then you have to compare it with the numbers last year, and maybe it was done completely different last year, and then you come up with the conclusion that it's a 17% rise. 17 or 17 and 5/8% rise over last year. Where's the accuracy come in here, and where do the inaccuracies come in?
Define what homeless is, because I think a lot of people have a misconception that they're actually under a bridge somewhere. And
Sure.
That's not.
So it's a large definition. So it's families living together. If they're living in trailers, anything that can be moved is.
No. No, wait a minute. One of the definitions from these two college students, are accepted by the state, accepted by somebody, I don't know, accepted by their fellow classmates, is that if you live in a trailer, something that can be moved, you just heard her say it, that means you're homeless. I'm going to roll back a little bit because you just got to hear this. Did she really say that? Okay, hold on a second. Here we go.
Families living together, if they're living in trailers, anything that can be moved is deemed homeless. Couch surfing, so all those things fall under what homeless is considered.
Families living in trailers. This may come as a surprise to you, or maybe some other people that live in the area or wherever you've lived during your life. If you've ever lived in a trailer, and I don't mean the kind of trailer you put on the back of your pickup truck, something that can be moved, as she says, that means that you're homeless. Well, okay, show's over. Good night, everybody. That's junk science. I'm not saying that they don't mean well. Well, we just want to put the water system in the huts. Yeah, I get it. That's wonderful. But you're defining people who are homeless as those who live in trailers? That's not the big one. The big one is coming. Just wait. Try not to laugh. Just show them the tape, Dale.
On the pit count, they literally will go out and count with the people that they find in the shelters and in the street. So a lot of these people probably are missed, the ones that are living together. So that number is probably even much higher.
And this is District 7 and 3 Rivers.
Yes.
It's all of Josephine County.
Also, if the youth live with grandparents.
Oh, that's the big one. Oh, no. If the youth live with grandparents, they're considered homeless. I hope that you're having the same reaction I did. I had to go like this when I'm taping this. If you live in a trailer, or you live with grandparents, then you're considered homeless. Yeah. Okay. Right. Junk science. I'm sure they're lovely people.
Their parents, and then they're homeless. They don't live with their biological parents.
That's where some of it, I mean, I appreciate that and all of it. I mean, we raised our grandson, and he's considered homeless.
Under criteria.
Yeah, which is absolutely inane.
I understand that.
I understand that. I understand it's absolutely inane. Now, on with our report. So Keith Eck is not buying into this part of it, okay? He doesn't believe, as probably you don't believe, this is what really happens. This is why I show you the tapes. Because you go, well, it can't be that bad. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. This is the kind of things that happen in the little back room. And sometimes the commissioners just, now, and the thing I've seen over and over and over and over is that here Keith Eck is saying, well, you know, I find that absolutely inane. But then later, you won't see it at this meeting, but later, almost always, the commissioners say, well, yeah, we're going to vote in favor of this. Yes, we think it's a wonderful project. And even though we've seen this at the budget committee, well, I agree that this and this and this and this and this are not answered. All those in favor, aye. What is it about the courthouse? What is it about the Ann Basker Auditorium that makes people feel like they just got to go along to get along? This is one of the reasons why Mike and I and this show and you are described as, you know, whacked out crazies, because we hear this kind of stuff. We go, well, that doesn't make any sense. Don't do that. Well, you're not going along to get along. As Simon Harris says, well, you know, get with the program. That's the program. Living with grandparents means you're homeless. You just had to see it to believe it. Yeah. Okay, so based on that firm scientific ground, let's go ahead. Should they be getting a grant? Ooh, you watch.
It's a matter of the statistic. It actually probably averages out for those who don't count, but those who do capture.
Okay, all right, so here's, sorry, I'm stopping it so often. Simon is saying, basically, that here you've got people who live, young people who live with their grandparents are counted as homeless, okay? Even though in some cases it's permanent. In fact, it's an increasing trend around the whole country, and one whole generation of people seem to have like withdrawn from taking care of their children, and their parents are watching over the children for the rest of their lives, basically. And so Simon says, well, that's basically okay, because those that we didn't get a chance to count, why that'd probably make up for it, because certainly there's going to be more people than we've counted. 17% increase. Why, there's got to be more than that. Well, what if there's less than that? Well, no, there's got to be more. Obviously, the fake science will prove that out. And so let's not worry about the fact that this is wrong from the beginning. So it's already started, you see. There, you know, how far into this are we're 2 minutes into this report from these college students that are brought in by Diane Hoover. And already Simon is already making excuse. Well, that's okay that this is just completely false and crazy and stupid and doesn't make any sense, because that doesn't take into account, well, at the Ann Basker Auditorium, look, a lot of people showed up, but that doesn't, even if the place is packed, why, there's thousands of people that didn't bother to show up, and they're the only ones that really count. Same thing here. Why, think of all the people we're not counting. This more than makes up for the people we're not counting. Fake science.
The statistic might be pretty close to accurate because of that broad definition. It may not exactly be an accurate way we would think of it, but.
Oh, okay. All right. Again, The statistic may be pretty close to accurate due to the fact that you've just told us something which is completely bogus. Why? That false science then pretty much proves that the statistics are accurate. It's almost impossible to believe that this is really happening today in the little back room with the commissioners.
Stable maybe, or something like that could be a better definition other than stable housing.
Right.
So, but the 17% increase from
Is really
last
good.
year is huge.
Yes.
If you're using the same standard
Exactly.
from year to year.
Mhm.
The other question I have, so this is based on the Pitt County test?
Yes.
Your study, okay, so it's not those that are.
Yeah.
And this is, so 37% of those, a little over 500, were youth under 18 years old. So 637 youth are enrolled in the Josephine County School District as of this year. So kind of some comparisons I did. So high school, we kind of focus on high school graduation rates, which is a little lower in this county than national average, about 87%. National average is 89. And then I did some county comparisons for Josephine, Seaview, Matilla, and Benton, just basically because there's similar size population.
There's the similar size population thing again. I wonder if they've been talking with J.J. Schofield about median income and similar size. Well, if you've got a similar size, then that means you have exactly the same problems as everybody else with a similar size. Like Beverly Hills, which has, it's down to within like 5 people of the size of Josephine County. And so Beverly Hills has completely the same problems as Josephine County. You can count on it because same population.
So what I found was that Josephine County has about approximately $12,000 less median income, with a homeless population of 1,500 compared to Benton County, which is 127 homeless, and a Pitt count, and 52 in Umatilla. So it's a huge drastic difference. So some of the methods that we used.
Yeah, so what we did was we interviewed the various community organizations and the community members and all the school advocates in Josephine County. That's where we started our research, and then we did the windshield survey, which means we drive around, we walk around, we see where possibly the homeless youth are hanging out and getting to know the area itself.
Now, okay, another error. I don't know if it's a small one or a big one that could possibly creep in to this scholarly study would be that if you talk to the head of some mission, or you talk to the head of a church, you talk to a soup kitchen, you talk to these people, is there any possibility that they may see the same person at all 4 locations? Possibility? Some. And when you go and you interview the people at the schools, is there any possibility that their numbers might be just a little bit off? So there's a possibility, I would say scientifically. I don't even know if it's possible to do this study correctly, but they're going to get a grant for it. Not at this meeting, but that's what they're looking for. Is it possible then that people are being counted wrong because of the way to gather the information? Now, I'm not saying I've got the answers about how to identify everybody that's homeless. We could put beepers on them, I suppose. We could put skin implants on them. Well, let's do that with everybody, really, when you think about it. But how are you really going to know? And if you're going to speak in generalities, okay, I can live with that. But when you get down to 17%, that's not a generality. It's junk science.
And we went to the 3 different high schools and to a community safe place that serves the homeless youth. So we kind of hung out then this term in those areas. We also used secondary data from Community Health Assessment 2013 and the Josephine County Homeless Task Force Pitt Count, which we discussed. We did a lot of research on various evidence-based research done regarding the homeless youth.
Evidence-based research, as opposed to what? Evidence-based research. Evidence-based. Same kind of evidence, gathered in the same way. Junk science, real science, imaginary science, wishful thinking science. I don't know. Evidence-based science. Great. Government evidence-based science.
So that's where we were gathering all our data, so evidence-based and secondary data.
What does that mean?
Evidence-based?
Yeah.
Well,
I know what evidence-based means, but
So,
what is the evidence-based information that you're?
so what we looked at, so we kind of focused on high school graduation rates for the homeless youth. And so what the evidence is telling us that is if the homeless youth are not supported, basically self-esteem is one of the number one factors of them continuing in school. So they fit in with their peers, they feel comfortable. So a lot of times they move around, they don't feel comfortable, they don't have new stuff, so they'll end up dropping out. And so studies say that if, below a high school graduation rate, your wages go way down, your employment goes way down, and so that just continues that poverty cycle. The same,
That's not what this was going to be about, was it? It wasn't. Was it about high school graduation, or was it about how many homeless youth are there and what's homeless mean? And now we're talking about high school graduation rates and how important it is these days that you must graduate from high school, because in Josephine County, you're not going to get a job. Well, I'm not sure it really matters if you have a high school education, or maybe you know better, but the biggest problem seems to be that there are a number of people who want to hire folks in the area, responsible folks with or without a high school education, and they can't pass the drug tests. That's what a number of the companies are saying. Now, are they all full of beans? They might be, but they all seem to have, a great number of them seem to have the same response about why they're not getting things done, because they can't find people who are not, who can pass a drug test. Are they rejecting the people because they don't have a high school education? I think it's more basic than that. But the answer to this one is, because this is concentrating on high school students who are homeless, living with their grandparents or in a trailer, that if they don't graduate, why, that's going to be very bad for them. Probably so.
so your homeless population is going to increase. Also,
So in round figures, so 45% of those who start ninth grade in Josephine County don't finish.
I think what he's saying here is round figures, he's making them up. I don't think that he's saying, I don't know. Is he saying that 45% of those who start high school in Josephine County don't graduate? He might be, but he did say in round figures. So occasionally what Keith Eck will do is he'll make up a number and he'll say, well, let's suppose that this was the case. Then how would we break that down? I don't know what he's doing here. And there's no way to ask any questions because this is the first time the presentation's been made.
I mean, the 45% of the group that start, 45% of them don't finish.
Okay.
Now, are those all, how many of those, that 45% is homeless according to this?
So two schools reported just above a 23% dropout rate, just this year alone of the county schools. Grants Pass High School has the most. They had about 70, 80 high school students that were homeless, a lot more in the younger elementary. So every school has a significant amount enrolled that are these homeless kids. And a lot of them are dropping out. And I think there's a problem with the school advocates, not so much in Grants Pass High School. They have a lot of resources there. But the county schools, what we're finding is that a lot of the advocates have several roles. So they're very limited on their amount or their ability to see where these kids are going and to help. And so a lot of these kids are just falling off.
How much of an effect do those advocates have? Do they get to see them 5 minutes, an hour, a month or something? If you're really trying to combat the fact that there's maybe an abusive household where there's very low incomes, it's the effectiveness. I mean, it could be very daunting to be one of those advocates, but.
Sorry about the air conditioning noise. That's the problem in the little back room. So what Simon is basically saying here is, look, even if somebody is full-time, how long do they get to see a student? The more students that have a problem, the less time that the advocate is going to have with seeing them. And if you see somebody for 5 minutes, how much of their problem can you actually solve? Is it a task that's impossible to do? I don't like to think so. Again, these are well-meaning people, but I'm feeling that we can't really get a handle on the problem based on the kind of definitions and science that's being used here. Oh, click the right button, sorry.
I think
Well, and that's one of the key drivers, Simon, to putting a community health worker in each one of the school districts, because that person's full-time job is going to be identifying those at-risk kids.
Now, okay, that explains why Diane Hoover is here. She's suggesting that one of the solutions may be to increase her staff or the people that she oversees and put a community health worker in every school, whose job it would be primarily, I'm assuming based on this meeting, to talk with 5 minutes or maybe 6 with all of the so-called homeless youth that are in the high school. Well, there's a source of never-ending angst in our community. That young people are homeless. As some of the candidates said that were running for county commissioner, a lot of these problems could be solved by more economic development in our area, or a number of them could be solved by taking that economic development money, instead of picking winners and losers among private enterprise, to turn it over to the police department, to the sheriff's office, so that we've got more patrols. I tend more toward the idea of let's make more people prosperous and then maybe they won't be homeless anymore, as opposed to if we crack down on them with more patrols, then they're not going to be homeless anymore. I don't see the logic behind that personally, but let's hear more solutions from these 2 college students.
And getting productive resources. So, and that was a grant that you guys
Yes.
approved, right?
Yeah, so that the Grand Pass High School, we do have Kathy, I don't include their name, but anyway, she is the full-time family advocate. But in the counties, they don't have a full-time advocate. So they have one is supposedly the family advocate at Hidden Valley. She's like the receptionist, and she has 1 hour a day to be a family advocate and another position. So it's very limited for her, and it's the county schools all together.
Okay, so another question which comes up is, here you've got this person that's spending a whole hour a day being a family advocate for however many homeless youth there are at the high school. Just how accurate are their numbers going to be about how many there are? Where's the science coming from? Sorry again about the audio quality here. This was the best the county could do and that we could do. I compared the 2, partly because you don't have any kind of professionals putting a microphone out there so that you can hear what's happening. We've offered to do that, but we've been turned down flat every time. They're not really interested in that kind of thing. It would be an accurate recording of what was happening. You can forget about that.
The Grand Pass High School has one full-time, and that's what she does.
So can you guys identify, share with the board what the gaps you found?
Yes, so the gaps we're finding is that, so with the surveys from homeless youth, their top needs were a safe shelter, transportation, and clothing. From the advocates, what they think that youth needs are large backpacks to kind of.
Oh, wait a minute now. Okay. The advocates, these representatives out there in the schools that are keeping such a close track and giving us the numbers. The students, when they ask them directly, what do you need? Well, I need food. I need a safe place to sleep. The advocates say, oh, no. They need big backpacks. It's not even on the list for the homeless youth. Not even on the list. Oh, they need things. They need a large backpack. Now think about if you were homeless, sorry to force you to think about if you were homeless, and you were walking around other homeless people, and you've got this big honking backpack on. What does that potentially expose you to? They just want food and a safe place to sleep. The advocates who are giving us the numbers They don't have a clue.
Going with the stuff they have. So there's gaps from county to city. The county, obviously, they're farther out. They don't have access to transportation that they do here in the city. They don't have the hours for the advocacy to help students to make sure that family, involvement. So they're losing a lot more students out there. And our research is telling us that, if they don't have one positive support or they don't have that one person to kind of help make sure they get through it, they're not going to continue high school. They're not going to go beyond that. One statistic I pulled out is for 1 year to put a youth in juvenile detention would cost about $57,000 compared to 1 year of housing. One youth is $5,500. That's a significant amount difference. So, and the other.
What housing? Oops, I seem to have frozen here. Just a moment. I will fix this. It happens every once in a while with the internet. I hope that you can hear me. Okay. What housing are we talking about here, bud? What kind of housing? There are a couple of people who work for, I think it's for Asante, and they're professionals. And they lost their housing. And so they're looking for some place, according to the health industry folks here that made a report later, they were looking for a place where they could stay in an apartment, okay? Well, it turns out that for under $1,000 a month, it's very difficult to find even an apartment in our area. So where are these homeless youth going to stay? These are young people that are minors. And how are they going to stay? Where are they going to stay? That really wasn't answered, but we're going to have to skip over that part.
The thing that they shared with me yesterday that I thought was kind of profound is the advocates thought that giving the kids the backpack was, their number one need, without realizing one again, and the consequences of that has been that then that makes them a target, right? So the people who want that backpack, and so. And
without that safe housing.
Right, that's right.
The kids have number one concern.
Exactly.
Everything else is really phenomenal.
But it has to be sure to have housing, not whether they're homeless.
Yeah. Well, I'm really not sure that I care about the definition. It's like,
Now, see, Keith Eck just brought up the definition of homeless. About, if you live with your grandparents and you're homeless. And Simon Harris saying, did he just say this? I'm not sure I care about the definition. So what's the correlation to Keith Eck's, I know we're breaking the law and I don't care. I know the science doesn't make any sense and I don't care. That's Simon here.
For these kids to be successful. One of the other things is that relative to Benton County, I went to school up there, and then Umatilla, that's not a very conducive place to be homeless. It's pretty cold. And the community is not, it's a different rural. It's a farm-based, ag-based rural, which is a tighter community. I think when I talk to the commissioners on the east side, one of the things that makes their community great is all the people who are involved in agricultural production. They seem to be really interested in their communities in just a different way. It's not better or worse, but it's just, they're really engaged in their communities. They're coming out to rodeos and fairs and doing all that stuff. We're a little bit disconnected. I think we've got these little communities, Williams and Wolf Creek and stuff. And people here prefer their solitude. They want to be out on their own. And there's that. And there's also the counterculture that was established in County here in the 60s. People who are a little bit less inclined to conform. And I think that's multi-generational. Kids that are interested in some other, they're not interested in going to college because their parents didn't go to college. And that culture lives on for sure in different regions of this community.
Right. So it's very simple in my mind in regards to why agricultural communities have less of the problems having lived in one and grew up in one. The generation before was that even if you weren't fond of a neighbor, you didn't have the same interests, or maybe they were a really belligerent individual when it came to some of the personal reactions. But you know what? You can always count on each other if you needed to get your crop in, if something was splitting, if your animals got loose, or, you know, your kid got lost, or you could count on those neighbors, even if
That's
you
a
weren't the best of
multi-generational
friends.
attitude.
You always knew you had to depend on each other because you were the only ones there.
Yep.
And that isn't the climate and the culture here.
You know,
There are individuals who still do that and still believe in that. I mean, even in the neighborhood I live in, sure, we do, but most neighborhoods.
in this flyer, the currently no overnight facilities to house unaccompanied homeless youth under 18. And that's a telling. There are no options. And of course, then you get into the requirements of liability costs. If you can house a minor, then you get all kinds of, sometimes the standards, requirements from the state forbid you to take somebody in, kind of thing.
Right.
But also the sign's getting forward. It's just, that's very telling. It says, you know, I have no excuse. Okay, good. You're taking ownership for the situation. I have no excuse. I just need some help. Okay. Yeah. There's kids out there, whatever the reason might be, they need to have some options for people to live, not just exist.
Well, sometimes when I was growing up, it almost can seem a little fun at first. You know, even if things aren't that bad, you just find another reason to go spend time at somebody else's place. But after a while, that gets old, and it wears on people. And then how do you get into something else that's more positive that actually has some stability? Do you guys have you guys are students, right?
Yes.
So this was a project that you did for your class? Okay, and then, so does that include proposed solutions?
Well, we're gonna go into the next term is, our fall term is leadership. So that's where we implement an intervention of some sort.
Yeah.
So this term is populations, we pick the populations, we do all the research. So pretty much sitting on our hands, gathering information. So that's, the next term is what we're doing, is implementing it.
And some information, so from the basics starts is what we thought is support, like more increased donations to the high school closets where the kids can access the things. So the ones that are in school, they have access to clothes, to hygiene supplies, to school supplies through the McKinney Mentor Act, and through community donations. So just making the community more aware of the numbers of the youth, because
Okay, so making the community more aware of the numbers of the youth. That's one of the things that we try to do, is make you aware of what the facts are and try to point out where the facts are not. In this case, what they're going to do next in their college class is they're going to come up with solutions based on bad science. Good science, you be the judge. They're going to come up with solutions. This is very similar to what happened with Eric Schaafsma and the Grants Pass Water Lab. He brought these numbers to the commissioners saying 6,000 times over the limit of human ability to, yeah, right. Well, as it turned out, it was not 6,000 times. It was 0 times over the limit. And so based on bad science, despite the fact that there are people who still argue, oh no, that was great science. They'll still argue this. The commissioners made a decision to spend a bunch of our money, a bunch of money that could have been spent elsewhere, on this bad project, and they've done it before. So now that they've gathered some of this information, which is bogus, they're going to base it's like a house of cards. They're going to base further decisions on this and come up with more numbers like 17% and 15,051 or whatever that number. What was it? I've got the brochure here too, because I didn't have to pay for it. It was amazing. I picked up one before they saw that I was getting it. Let's see. They say that there's 1,551 homeless people in Josephine County. There's the brochure. Yay, boy. Now we've got that solidified. Right.
I wasn't aware of any of those organizations. And so I think that would be a positive thing to make sure they have that stuff to give to the kids. It's a place to start. Another place is one of the community organizations here that works with youth. Is going to have that vocational people coming in and act as a mentor with them. And I think that it would be a positive thing if we can get some kind of vocational training implemented with that program, like teaching them basic things like how to budget or things that they're not going to learn if they don't have that positive adult in their life that we have.
Well, okay, I'm going to say it again. These seem to be two young people that have got their hearts in the right place. Good. And they are seeking to influence government decisions and the grant the grant process in order to be able to get more money to do things based on bad science that they don't see, that Keith Heck started to see, but that Simon Hare keeps denying that that's bad science. So it's completely made up for by other things that I'm imagining. Okay? And so they're good-hearted people. They just simply wish to do something to be part of the solution. Is it possible that you can start off with bad ideas and bad science and end up with things that are good results? Well, look, the Grants Pass Water Lab had in mind keeping us safe. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Well, the thing is, they based it on something which was false, something that you would think a water lab would get straight, but they didn't. And it wasn't until citizens got involved and said, this doesn't make any sense. And here's what common sense tells us, and here's what science tells us, and here's what outside experts tell us, that they got off of that. And it cost us $77,000. It was going to cost us well over $600,000, money that could have gone to something else which was real. So what do we do about all this? One is, in my opinion, I think that we need to look at the source of some of this information and say, it's a rule of thumb. It's probably not fair. But when I look at Cheryl Walker, for example, and Cheryl Walker is the source of this, and not in this case, this, and this, I start to develop an attitude where if it's another project brought to us by Cheryl Walker, kind of like, well, let's suppose that Eric Shasma of the Grants Pass Water Lab came in and said, I have found now hexavalent chromium in our drinking water. I would think twice before I'd accept this expert's opinion that was proven to be wrong. Wouldn't you? Okay, so in this particular case, we've got Diane Hoover, who came in and said, well, I want you to listen, you county commissioners, to these young people who have really got their heads screwed on right. Okay, I admit they've got good hearts. And I want to present to you as the department head of health that here are some numbers that we should be paying attention to. Wait a minute. How far out does that extend? When we did a show here about the Grants Pass Water Lab and that whole debacle, and the idea that they just had to back off those numbers real quickly, and that they had mentioned arsenic, and suddenly it was nothing. I got a call, I mentioned this on the show before, I got a call from some fellow that said, you don't know me, but I really admire the work that you do in putting out information to people that they should know. Okay, thank you very much. And I got a bunch of stories I'd like to share with you, and other people I know would like to share with you. Okay, oh, well, that sounds great. But I have a requirement first. A requirement first. That requirement could be keep my my identity anonymous. I understand that. We're going to need two sources. Okay, but we can do that. There could be a variety. No, he says, my requirement is you lay off Diane Hoover. What? Yeah, stop criticizing Diane Hoover and we'll deliver you all kinds of stories. That's kind of an unusual request. If you see Diane Hoover doing something, the head of the health department, doing something that's somewhat doubtful, like promoting this idea of the arsenic scare that was false, just ignore it. And then we're going to provide you with a bunch of stories. Well, what do you think my answer should be? Now, I'm going to be more polite than just hanging up or laughing and then hanging up. So I said, well, I tell you what, why don't you supply me with a little story first, and we'll see how it pans out, and then I'll talk to you more about this. Oh, okay. You think there was ever any story? This is somebody from the community, don't know what his connection is to Diane Hoover, who's saying, if you just lay off this department head, why, we're going to supply you guys with all kinds of stories. This is the truth. That's what happened. So let's just, because I'm ending up with not a whole lot of time over, let's just put this whole thing in perspective. Projects that come, maybe Diane Hoover is full of all kinds of good ideas. She's certainly full of something, as am I, as are some of you. And here is a story that I think is pretty emblematic of the kinds of things that we can expect from a department head in the county of Josephine, and especially from Diane Hoover. Listen carefully to what she said. You've heard the story before.
So I wanted to start off with some good news. The department, we're a sub-awardee with Healthcare Coalition of Southern Oregon for a 5-year federal grant in the Southeast Park. Based on our performance on this grant in its first year and the funding formula change, the amount of our awards for both Josephine County Public Health and Community Health Center is going to increase this year from $71,000, which is what we got in year one, to $149,600 for the continuation of that work. Josephine County is carrying this federal grant. Jackson County has basically backed out of it. The reason we were able to, HCSO was able to qualify to apply for the grant was because of our zip codes, the low infant or the high infant mortality rate in certain zip codes, and they've expanded those zip codes to include every zip code in our county now. So that's really good news for us.
Yeah, it's good news. That's horrible. That's
Yeah. At least we're getting money to work on it.
Yeah.
At least we're getting ready to work on it. Why, there's the solution to the problem. Congratulations. Good news. Said it twice. We're going to get more grant money because our infant mortality rate is so high. It really is a good idea every once in a while to look at that tape and see this is what, gee, I'm doing the opposite of what that guy suggested I should do. I am looking at Diane Hoover and saying, that's pretty awful, Diane Hoover, that you would say such a thing twice. There's no mistake. She didn't say it by accident. She meant it. We're going to get more grant money because we have more dead babies. Is there a nicer way to put that? Do you like the kind of people that she's bringing in to talk with the county commissioners? Eric Safsma, these two young people that probably mean well. Don't know if Eric did, but these two young people mean well. It's just simply based on bogus science, based on a house of cards, based on arsenic that doesn't exist. That's your little back room. Thanks for being here this evening. Good night.